What a difference today. Good morning, everybody. The storm has passed. Sometimes people think that the prophets and these great people of God have been way up in the clouds, but their life has been also marked by all the limits of humanity. And here we see Samuel having a hard time dealing with, oh boy, look at this. I have to show you something. Look, I just got a glimpse of Mount Hermon. It would have been nice if we could be in a higher spot, but it's snow-capped because of all the rain, and that's so much higher, and it was snow. And there you can see the early morning light. Probably the sun is hitting it, even though we can't see the sun disk here, because that's so much higher. So it's surely the sun is shining directly on the snow. Let me get this stable for you. There we go. You can see that little bit of white that's above the hills there. That's the snow, the fresh snow. You're watching the fresh snow on Mount Hermon this morning. Behind that tree there you have the Mount of Beatitudes, and then Capernaum. So Samuel is grieving because I'm sure he was personally tied to Saul. He was, let's say, emotionally connected because of that very big step, which he also wrestled with God about. He was recommending to God, let's not appoint a king. The people kept insisting for a king, and God heard and said, let them have their way. They're going to suffer through kings afterwards, but let them have their way for now. Because it takes a long time to learn how to lead, how to be a king, how to be a true leader in any field. Parents have a lot of a learning curve, and then after they have their fourth or fifth or sixth child, then they kind of have it down pat. But the problem with power as well is that selfishness can come in and distort the best opportunities. And the first thing we see here in this text today, just from this human side of Samuel, which is really, really wonderful pencil strokes about his person. So then the next thing is, you notice as you read the whole story today that Samuel doesn't know what God is going to eventually do. How he's going to do it, he doesn't know. And yet he goes forward. I find that marvelous, that, the prophets didn't have some magic insider knowledge. The prophets and we all share in the prophetic vocation to speak for God, for his plan. Isn't that beautiful? And we have to be attentive. And there's the great word listening, that great word of biblical culture, listening. Listening for God's voice, discerning what God wants in our lives. Being open, being able to keep walking with the information we have, with the awareness we have, with the knowledge we have, being able to keep walking, but letting God in his good time with patience we wait until he shows us the next step. In God's good time. In God's good time. And then the next thing we see, there's still another very strong feature today. That means prophets don't know. Okay, they know when God tells them, but before that they don't know. How many times we don't know how this child is going to work out, how this employee is going to work out, how this marriage is going to work out, that what difficulties the spouse. Because, people don't have the total 100% knowledge of their spouse, but they made the commitment of love in good times and bad times. In poverty and riches, we don't know what's going to happen with the economy. And there comes the sun. In health or in sickness, and we don't know. COVID, in-laws. Nobody knows a lot of things about the future, and yet we keep walking with great faith. We don't demand from God that we have to know everything right now. Going to go to the doctor for a diagnosis. And I don't know what will be the result. That's a very simple occasion. It's not about becoming a king or not becoming a king, or naming this king or naming that king. It's just simply about trusting. Walking with trust. And in fact, the cars, you can hear the cars over there, right? Well, there's some bridges along the road. And you trust that nobody went in there and blew it up, Happens sometimes in war. Or an earthquake comes and the bridge falls. Like that terrible tragedy that happened in Italy. It wasn't an earthquake, just the bridge caved in. And you don't know, you're driving along and trust. We can't live without trust because we can't control all the circumstances of our lives. And therefore that's a great side to humanity. To be able to keep walking. To be able to keep trusting. Imagine those parents. I've read an incredibly beautiful story of a family in Chicago. In fact, I have to go back to it because it was difficult the technology of the report. It kept moving too fast and there were texts to read. But a young family with a very ill child. And first of all, the diagnosis in the womb was very troubling. And the story they went along with, even though some doctors had been recommending to intervene in ways that are completely counter to our faith, this family went along. An amazing story of trust, an amazing story of faith. And then the third thing was when Samuel did get his instructions what he needed to do, he was afraid. God wants me to go and do this, take this step, and he was filled with fear. Filled with fear. What will King Saul do to me if he finds out that God is changing the horses in the middle of the river? Changing the wagon horses, changing the king. What will Saul do to me? And then as we see the story progress, we see Samuel, moving forward, and God's plan is being built up. And Samuel shows up, and Jesse brings in this like football linebacker guy to be this candidate for king, his oldest son, probably plenty of good, strong ego and so forth, might be very smart or whatever. And then Samuel learns from the Lord in his heart that this is not the one. And the next one is not the one. And the one after that's not the one. Sometimes we have to try a lot in life. This is the human side. And the prophets were not free from that. The transmission took a little hit there because I went into the area of this house, and it, or maybe it was the Franciscan one there behind the wall, activated the Wi-Fi and tried to switch. So if any of you experienced a little glitch, it was the problem now was on my side. Samuel didn't have those problems with Wi-Fi. And eventually David is presented, the great story of David's vocation. The last one, the one that nobody wanted to propose. Out there in the fields looking after the sheep. Go and get him. We can't start the sacrifice until David comes. Imagine everybody digesting that. All the older brothers digesting that. The parents, because they don't know the mystery of each child they have. And everybody had a role in preparing David. Imagine the mother and the father, the grandparents, even Ruth, way back. And the brothers had a role. The way they treated him, the way they challenged him, you know, the little sibling rivalry. Oh, there we got our fishermen. And they look like they have a full boat. Does that mean they have all the nets pulled back in? Fishermen on the Sea of Galilee. One of the stories that touched my heart most in regard to people's role in people of great impact in the world's history was a peasant family in the north of Italy, and the film. Oh, I know what happened. Okay, I'm still there. Good. Hope you're still there. So you know what happened to the fishermen now. They went off on their course. I'm failing to pick up my last thought that I had shared with you. But we've already got a lot of thoughts there for the moment. The water keeps pouring in here from all the rain we've had. All the land around here for miles must be soaked. How people were supportive of everyone. There's no one great king in history, no one great prophet in history that has done it alone. No one great state leader, no one inventor, nobody has done it alone. And so many people have had essential key role in developing that person. Obviously the parents, the grandparents, the siblings, neighbors. And I was telling you about this peasant family in northern Italy, and they were very poor, and then an uncle that didn't have children was visiting, and I won't go into that story now, but it's amazing. And that little boy became Pope John the 23rd, who left an incredible mark in the history of humanity. So each one of us has a role, and it could be a one-moment encounter that made an impact on somebody, or a deed of kindness. It could be maybe there was no direct contact, but they saw you doing something beautiful for somebody else, or maybe it was a prayer you said. You have no idea the importance of your life and what you do. To have that faith, to leave that space of unknowing to God, of the impact of your life, to treat that with great mystery. And also as simple folks, you see, there's a famous story of a couple that arrived at Harvard And they didn't look incredibly well dressed. Hey, what do we have here? I think we have probably catfish, but I'm not sure. Let me see. Yeah, I think it's catfish. It must be the season. They were there now again. Here the water's coming up. There are Egyptian geese have grown quite a bit. Territorial dispute, maybe. Very good. Let's leave it like that for today, people. I hope I haven't gone too long. We didn't get to the gospel passage. It's connected to a story about David. We leave it for another time. See you later, alligators. God bless you.